Hello everyone, this is Rose from chunkbase.com with yet another slime farming tutorial. This time in swarm biomes. The tutorial is part of a series, so if you haven't watched the introduction part yet, now would be a good time to do so. To quickly recap, slimes can spawn in swarms between layer 51 and 69, but unlike in slime chunks, it has to be dark for them to spawn. So you cannot prevent other hostile mobs from spawning, which kinda mitigates the higher spawn rate of slimes in swarms, compared to slime chunks, where you don't have to worry about other mobs at all. Also, you should know that the spawn rate in swarm depends on the moon phase. Basically, the fuller the moon, the higher the spawn rate. Now, in this tutorial, I want to show you how you can build a fully automatic and easily scalable slime farm in swarms. Since we have to deal with the other hostile mobs anyway, I came up with two designs for the spawning platforms. The one you can see here is what I call the hostile version of the farm, because with this one you'll get much more drops from hostiles other than slimes. So let me quickly give you an overview of this farm before I show you the alternative design. All kinds of hostile mobs will spawn on these platforms. Once the slime spawns, it will keep jumping into one direction until it falls into either one of those mini canals or into the wider canals surrounding these platforms. The other hostile mobs, on the other hand, will randomly wander around, but if they don't make it into the canals, they will freeze after a few seconds, at which point they'll prevent more mobs from spawning until they despawn, or until they're pushed into the canals by other mobs. The mini canals are here so that they'll fall into one before they freeze. But since they're intelligent enough not to walk over edges if they would fall down more than a few blocks, the canals need to be on every spawning floor. Now, once a mob has entered the canal system, it will be transported to a trap. In this farm I used a drowning trap, which separates slimes from the rest and then drowns them. Of course, you could also use them for XP farming or whatever you want. The other version is much simpler. As you can see, we've got these flat platforms without any canals. This way, far less hostiles other than slimes will make it into the canal system. Instead, most of them will stay here until they despawn. And as I already mentioned, the disadvantage of that is that they'll prevent other mobs from spawning on the space they occupy. Also, it will lower the spawn rate because there's a limit of how many mobs there can be at a given time. So it may even lower the spawn rate in other hostile farms you may have. Oh, and down there you can see a lava trap, which is an alternative to the drowning trap you've seen before. But more about it later. So before you start building, you have to decide which of the two platform types you want to use. If you already have a dedicated mob farm, or if you want a decent amount of drops other than slime balls from this farm, you should go for the hostile version. Otherwise you can go for the plain version, which you can see right now. However, if you plan to keep this farm very small, which may make sense now that we have hoppers, you can go for the plain version as well. So the first thing you want to do is to find a swamp biome. I won't go into this in this tutorial, just know that in single player you could use mods or external tools to find them. Also note that swamp biomes sometimes have river biomes inside of them, so make sure to find an area without them. Now you have to decide on the dimensions of your farm. Generally speaking, the more spawning ground you have, the more spawns you'll get. So first of all, you want to settle on the horizontal size of the platforms. I'd recommend making it a square, but basically any rectangular shape will do. And if you want to go for the hostile version of this farm, you should make it so that either the length or the width is a multiple of 4 plus 2. So for example 6 blocks, 10 blocks, 14 blocks, 18 blocks and so on. This way we can be sure that we can later add the water canals without any problems. You also have to decide on which level you want to start. Since slime spawn from layer 51 to 69 in swarms, starting at layer 51 is usually a good idea so that you can have as many floors as possible. And even if you don't want to build multiple floors right now, you'll be able to do so later. Expanding the farm horizontally would be much more stressful. In this tutorial I'll be making the platform 30 by 30 wide and build a total of 3 floors. So now I'll just hollow out some space so that you can better see what I'm doing. Of course, in your world you could also start closer to the surface or build a farm from the inside out below the ground. The next step is to add some gaps on the platform for the water canals. You only need to do this if you are going for the hostile mob version of this farm, otherwise you can skip this step. So what you need to do is to add these 2 wide and 3 deep gaps, and after every gap leave 2 blocks for the spawning ground, and repeat. And of course you need to make them all the way to the end of the platform. You could also play around with the length. For example, you could make the canals only 1 wide, which would reduce the drops you get from spiders by a lot since they can't fall into 1 wide canals. But you might get more slime balls and other hostile drops because there will be more ground to spawn on. And this is what it looks like once you're finished. Now is also a good time to add some floors. Simply leave a 3 high clearance and repeat the platform layout. Like this. You could also make it 4 high so that big slimes can jump faster without hitting the ceiling. But by doing so you won't be able to build as many floors. So you should only do this if your platforms are very big or if you don't care about adding more floors. If you're building the hostile farm, you have to add these gaps for the water canals as well. So again leave a 3 high clearance, but this time start with the ground block of the canals. And then you have to add another 2 blocks before actually reaching the spawning ground. So as you can see, this layout takes up a lot more blocks vertically, so you won't get as many floors with this. Before we can start building the water canals, we need to make some room around the lowest platform. So if you're building the basic swamp farm, you'll need to create a gap which needs to be 3 wide and at least 1 deep. You could also make it 2 or 3 blocks deep, which might get you a few more kills of tall hostile mobs, but 1 should be enough for most farms. And for the hostile version, you should go at least 1 block beneath those mini canals. Like this. And here's what it will look like once you're finished. The next thing you want to do in your hostile swamp farm is to create those mini canals. At this point you have to decide in which directions the mob will leave this spawning system. In the following step we'll choose one of the 4 corners, so if you want them to end up at either of these 2 corners, you have to start the water stream right here. And if you want them to end up at either of those 2 corners, you need to start the water streams on the opposite side. So we'll just start the water streams right here. And first you want to block off this end of the canal, and then we have to place some blocks here, because a 2 high drop is enough, but you can't extend the water stream without going 1 block deeper. So that's why we made them 3 deep in the first place. And now we can place the water sources right here. At this point you have to elevate them 1 block, so just place some stairs there and signs here. And now the water can flow back down. You shouldn't use slabs here because that would allow small slimes to get stuck. So now again place some blocks and let the water run dry. At the end of the canal we want them to be on the upper level, so we have to elevate them right here. And place signs at the end of the canal. Oops. So now once they fall down into the canal, they'll be transported all the way until they fall down. Now you have to repeat this for every single canal on every floor. Alright, so now we can finally start with water streams around the platform. And just so you know, the remainder of this tutorial will be exactly the same for both types of farms, so no more switching back and forth. Also, if you've already seen the slime chunk farm tutorial, this will be nothing new for you. First, you have to choose one of the 4 corners for the mobs to end up at, so that's where you later build a trap and the collection area. Once you've decided on a corner, you'll have to start with the water streams at the opposite corner. So we'll just use this corner and the mobs will end up over there. Start by putting 3 water sources right here, and since we don't want any diagonal streams because slimes can easily get stuck, we'll seal off the other direction like this with signs. And now the water stream for that direction will start here. So now simply use the same technique I already showed you for the mini canals, and just let the water run dry. And now you have to elevate them. So put signs over here. And as I mentioned before, you don't want to use steps, you want to use stairs. So again, new water sources, drop them, place more water. Okay, now that's bad luck. We need to find a way so that the water stops right before the corner. So we'll just have to elevate them before. And at the corner we want to have a 3 high drop, so that 2 slimes can't push each other while they hit different canals. And we need to put signs here and water there. And from here on we'll do pretty much the same thing we did before the corner drop. Now since we're 3 blocks down, we want to get them back to the original layer instead of dropping them. So simply repeat until the next corner. And then you have to do this for the other direction as well. Once you're done, it should look something like this. And now we have to create an intersection at that corner. So for that we'll use a 3 high drop again. but this setup here is pretty shitty, so first of all we want to stop the water stream from this side right here, so we have to create a drop. And at the corner we want a 3 high drop again. Like this. 1, 2, 3. And now we want this direction to continue from here through there. So we need to make a drop before, and we need to leave a 3 wide gap so that the mobs won't push each other. And put signs here. Alright, that should do. Now all the mobs will flow along this lower canal. The next part of the farm is a trap to kill big and medium slimes as well as other hostile mobs. So as you can see, I've got 3 different trap designs to show you. One drowning trap, one hybrid iron golem / drowning trap, and one lava trap. The advantage of the drowning trap is that it can handle any amount of mobs at the same time, and it will yield 100% of the loot. However, drowning mobs take some time, which may reduce the efficiency of your farm. The iron golem trap is quite similar to the drowning trap, but it will kill slimes much faster, and it's also faster in killing other hostiles, except for creepers, which usually won't be attacked by the golems. However, unlike the drowning trap, it requires the latest 1.5 version because of the hoppers, and it also costs a lot of iron. Also, it won't allow you to keep small slimes alive, so you couldn't use them for XP farming or anything. Another thing I want to mention is that golems seem to be able to escape their cells sometimes, but I've only seen it happen with ridiculous amounts of golems, and I couldn't reproduce it with just a couple of them. Still, if you build this trap, you should keep an eye on it. Finally, the lava trap design is a modified version from Xisuma and Red Eyes. You can find links to their videos in the description. It requires 3 blocks of soul sand from the nether, but it is probably the easiest trap to build. It also kills mobs faster than the drowning trap, but only as long as it can keep up with the spawns. The major disadvantage of it is that some of the small slimes and some of the loot, especially that from spiders, will be burned by the lava. So now that you've seen the traps, it's time to actually build them, starting with the drowning trap. Basically, the design of the drowning trap can be broken down into 3 parts. A mechanism to separate slimes from other hostile mobs, a drowning pit for the big and medium slimes, and a drowning contraption for the hostile mobs. As you can see, I've removed some blocks again so that you can better tell what's going on. And first of all, we'll start by digging 4 blocks down in a 3x3 area at the end of the water stream. This will be the drowning pit for the slimes. So that's 4 blocks. Now we have to put a slab in the center so that only small slimes make it all the way down. And now we have to place water on either of the 4 sides, depending on where you want the small slimes to end up at. So we'll just choose this way. Next we'll create a water canal for the small slimes, so we'll remove these blocks, add some signs, and make the canal down there. So the small slimes will now flow this way. Now we have to put signs all around the slab so that the water we'll put in a sec won't affect the water below. Like this. Next we want to create a water stream to flow over this pit, so we'll just add some signs so that the water won't interfere with the canal for the incoming mobs. Now I'll just add some walls and put some blocks here so that there's no way for the slimes to get past the drowning pit. And add more walls. Now we have to place some temporary blocks so that the water will flow over the pit. And place the water like this. So now we can remove these blocks again. For the last step of the drowning pit we have to place water sources in there everywhere, from the top here all the way down to the sides. This way it's extremely unlikely that hostiles other than slimes will fall down into the pit. You also have to make sure that you don't miss the central block, so just add a block like this and place water at the front of it. And now do the same thing for the remaining two layers. You can also place the water on top of the slab here. So now the slime drowning and separating part should be working. So let me just extend the walls again so I can demonstrate it to you. Now I'll just try to open up the canal for the small slimes. Nah, not here. Okay, so now I'll just add a drop. And put some glass so we can see them. Alright, now I'll just spawn some mobs. And as you can see, the slimes fall down and the other hostile mobs will flow over the pit. And there's already some small slimes down here. So let's just wait a sec till the bigger slimes have drowned. And there they are. Now we can get to the last part of the trap, which is the hostile drowner. So first of all you want to add a ceiling, like this, so that the tall mobs will barely get through. Now we can extend it this way. And close off this side of the trap. So this is where the hostiles will be drowned and the items will fall down. So now we'll have to make these walls a bit higher. And also you should add some water here so that the items will flow faster, like this. And since we'll be filling this up with water, we need to add some signs again, so that the water below won't be touched. Oops. And also add signs here. Now we want to make this drone a bit higher so that the mobs will swim 3 blocks up once they come in. Now fill everything up with water sources. And then seal it off. For the last part we'll need to get to their drops, so we just put some slabs here. And add another item canal below. This way only the items will get through. So let me just demonstrate this again. And it's working. The slimes will fall into the pit and the hostiles will swim up. And all of them will drown. So let's see what's going on down there. Some small slimes already. Once these medium slimes have drowned, there should be a lot more. Yeah. And there's the hostile drops. You could also use this separating mechanism by replacing the drowning pit or the hostile drowner. For example, you could have an iron golem trap for the slimes and a gravity trap for the other hostiles. Or you could use them for XP farming, disc farming, whatever you have in mind. Finally, here's how to build the iron golem trap. As you can see in the blueprints, it's quite similar to the drowning trap. But this time we are separating and killing the hostile mobs within that 3x3 space, because their loot can get stuck on a slab or something. And instead of the drowning pit for the slimes, we have iron golems in there now. There are also some iron golems on the top of the hostile drowner, which will speed up the killing of spiders and tall mobs, except for creepers. So again, we start off by digging 4 blocks down in a 3x3 area at the end of the mob canal. If you're getting a lot of mobs in your farm, you should dig 3 blocks farther, because big slimes will fly up a bit after being hit and they can block some of the other mobs. And then we have to replace the bottom layer with hoppers, so just get rid of all those blocks and place a chest on one of the sides. And now place the hoppers. For example, this way. Now I'll just replace this wall with glass for later. And now we can build the remaining walls. So just leave a 3 high clearance right here and make the other walls as high. Again, we want the mobs to flow up 3 blocks, so just add another 2 layers. Down in the slime pit we have to place some signs to stop the water, so just put signs on the second layer counting from the top, all around and in the center as well. Next we want to create a water stream flowing over the pit, so we'll just put some signs here and here. And then we have to place some temporary blocks here, so the water can flow over them. And place the water. Now we can remove those blocks again. At the end of the stream we have to place more signs, and we also have to replace the water blocks below with water source blocks. Otherwise the hostile mobs could sink. So just use some blocks to get to the center. Next we have to place some signs above the flowing water stream, so that it won't be affected by the water we're gonna put in at the top. And now fill everything up with water sources. At this point you could add a simple ceiling and the hostile drowner would be working. But since we want some iron golems to kill them faster, we'll use slabs here to cover it. Like this. And now we also have to extend it by 1 block on every side. Otherwise the golems wouldn't reach the mobs at the edge of the drowning tube. And since we don't want any hostile mobs attacking our golems, we'll fully enclose their cell. Before we add the ceiling, we should get some iron golems in, of course. You can also drop them from above, like this. And now we'll seal it off. So let me just make some room here before I show you. Oh, and we also want some iron golems in the slime pit. We can simply spawn them anywhere inside the farm and push them into the canals, and they'll end up in the pit because they can't swim just like slimes, and they're shorter than 3 blocks. So I'll just spawn 4 golems now. This should be more than enough for most farms. And here they are. So I'll just spawn some mobs again. And as you can see, the hostiles will be killed by the golems and the creepers will drown. And down there the slimes are being killed by the golems. The slimes can't hit him, so no worries. And all the loot will end up in this chest. Alright, next I'll show you how to build a lava trap. So again, here's the blueprint so you can tell what's going on. And as you can already guess, it's much easier to build than the drowning trap, but it requires 3 blocks of soul sand. So let's start building. First of all, you want to extend the water stream here a bit because we need some space. Then we can also add the walls. Just make them 3 high for now. Like this. And now we can put the water here. And now we want to create the canal for the small slimes at the end of the water stream. So we'll just remove these blocks and add some signs there. And the water source here. So that's where the small slimes and the drops from the hostile mobs will end up. Now we have to place lava here. So we'll just add some signs. Place the lava. And we want to add a ceiling here so that the hostile mobs can swim up. And right here we want a single lava block to kill the big slimes. You can choose any of these 3 spots. So just place some signs again. Place the lava. And seal it off. Oh, and the most important thing is to add these 3 blocks of soul sand at the end of the canal, cause otherwise most of the small slimes coming from dead medium slimes would be killed by the lava, which is not what you want. And now we can seal the whole thing off. Right here we need to make this 1 higher because otherwise big slimes couldn't get through. So make it 4 high right here. And that's it. So now let me quickly demonstrate this again. And as you can see, they all get killed and the big and medium slimes will get split up. And the small slimes will end up here. As well as the loot from the other hostile mobs. So again, credit for this trap goes to Izuma and Red Eyes, who came up with this soul set method, which is probably the biggest problem when trying to design a lava trap for slimes. Now, in this final part of the tutorial, I want to show you a few ways to handle the small slimes. This part is basically the same as in the slime chunk farm tutorial. So the obvious thing would be to kill them, which you can do by letting them drown, by placing a slab right here at the top, at the end of the canal, so only the items can get through. And that's where they will fall down. So let's give it a try. Now, unfortunately, it takes some time for them to drown, so this is not a good way to kill them, because this will reduce the effectiveness of your farm. But it does the job. And of course, you don't need to drop that deep, you could simply add a water canal here, or a hopper, or whatever you want. A more effective way to kill them is a gravity trap. So you just place a sign here, and then you have to let them fall down at least 4 blocks. However, sometimes the slime can survive a 4 block drop, so I'll make this 5 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now you want to add a hopper, and below that a chest. So that's where the slime balls and the other loot will be collected. And then of course you have to seal it off, so they can't get out. Now let's see if it works. And it does. The last thing you have to do in order to finalize your farm is to enclose it and remove all the lighting that you may have used, so that there is no light during daytime, because slimes can spawn if the light level is greater than 7. And it's also a good time to get rid of any blocks Endermen can carry, like dirt and grass, so they won't dismantle your farm or crack it open. And if you want to further increase the efficiency of your farm without expanding it, you should light up the surface and the caves around the farm. But this will not work well if there are lots of other players in your world. To conclude this tutorial, I want to show you a few more contraptions for small slimes, some of which I figured out during my testings. So let's start with this one. This basically does the same as the slab you've seen before, but we are using a fence gate here. You could also simply use a fence, but with a fence gate you can choose whether you want the slimes to drown or let them pass. The next one is actually really simple. It's basically an unlimited holding area, because I've seen some people on YouTube coming up with huge storage tanks and the like, but all you need is a 2 high and 1 wide space. And this one shows the elevation with ladders, so as you can see the slimes will simply climb up. But you should be warned that sometimes 1 or 2 slimes may be stuck in the system. And at the bottom sometimes one may drown if the water level is too high. And on to the next. This basically combines the previous 2 contraptions. So at the top here you have an unlimited storage. You can simply pull the lever and they'll fly away. And last but not least, here's a junction for small slimes. It's basically only 2 pistons, and below here is a sign. And one of the piston signals is inverted. So if we flick this lever, instead of falling down, the slimes will end up here. Now, since this was my first spoken tutorial or Minecraft video in general, I'd really appreciate some feedback, so let me know if you prefer this over videos with subtitles. Also, I wanna thank everyone who subscribed to me in the past, even though I've only uploaded a couple of videos over the last 2 years or so. Finally, I wanna draw your attention to chunkbase.com, which is a website I recently launched with Minecraft apps, mods and tutorials. So thank you for watching, good luck with your slime farm, and if you liked the video please like and subscribe. See you around.